Hello, and welcome to your lesson on the XLOOKUP function. The XLOOKUP function provides the ability to search from left to right and can also search by rows, similar to the HLOOKUP feature. This feature makes the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP functions almost obsolete. Unfortunately, it is only available on Office 365 at the moment. However, you should still take the time to learn about this feature. Today, I will use the XLOOKUP function to perform a column search similar to the VLOOKUP. I will also do a horizontal search similar to the HLOOKUP. To further expand on the capabilities, we'll wrap the lesson up by creating a dependent drop-down list. Please open the reference workbook and go to the Shipping XLOOKUP tab to follow along in this lesson. Okay, so here we are on our spreadsheet. We're going to begin by doing a column search to return the priority information for the individual order IDs. So let's go ahead and begin by selecting cell F2. Let's type equal and XLOOKUP. Now this is very similar to the VLOOKUP function. The difference is the XLOOKUP function can search to the right or the left of the identifier. Additionally, we do not have to assign numbers to our columns, making the formula easier to execute. Okay, so let's continue on. Let's go ahead and place an opening parenthesis. Let's select our identifier, which is in cell B2. Let's place a comma. Let's head over to the List tab and select our common identifier. I'm just going to go ahead and select the entire column. Okay, now let's go ahead and place another comma. This time, let's select the column for the return value. So let's just go ahead and select the priority column. Let's go ahead and place a closing parenthesis and select Enter. Okay, and as you can see, it's fairly easy and it's less complicated than using the VLOOKUP to return this value. Let's do one more and then we'll do an autofill. Let's select equal and type XLOOKUP. Let's place an opening parenthesis. Let's select our identifier, which is in cell B3. Let's go ahead and place a comma and head over to the List tab. Again, let's select our common identifier, which is in column C. Again, I'm just going to select the entire column. Let's place a comma. Now let's go ahead and select the priority column. Let's place a closing parenthesis and hit the Enter key. Okay, and again, our information has been returned correctly. Now from here, I want to do an autofill. Let's go ahead and select cell F2. Let's hover to get our black cross. Let's simply drag it down. Okay, so that completes the lesson on columns and the XLOOKUP function. Let's move on into our rows. Now this time, we're going to extract the information from the horizontal table. We're going to base it on our sales rep, but we're going to be extracting information above the sales rep and beneath the sales rep. So let's begin by typing Bobby in the sales rep box. Okay, let's go ahead and skip down to the next cell. Let's go ahead and say equal and type XLOOKUP. Let's place an opening parenthesis. First, we're going to select our identifier, which is in cell C20. Let's select the comma. Then let's go ahead and select the common identifier row. Okay, let's place another comma. Now let's go ahead and select the row for the return value, which will be the row above the sales rep. Let's go ahead and place a closing parenthesis and type Enter. And as you can see, it has returned Michigan for Bobby. Let's move on into the order date. Okay, let's go ahead and type equal and XLOOKUP. Let's place an opening parenthesis. Let's select our identifier. Let's place a comma. Now let's go ahead and select our common identifiers, which is in row 15. All right. Now let's go ahead and place another comma. Let's select the row for our return value. Now let's go ahead and place a closing parenthesis and select Enter. So as you can see, Bobby's information is reflected. But if we change the rep, we will change the rest of the information because these cells are dependent on the sales rep. Let's go ahead and type Frank. And let's see if we get Ohio and the October 28th date. Okay, let's do Jane, and then we'll move on to the next lesson. We should get Texas, and we should get January 13th. Let's go ahead and click enter. So as you can see, this is functioning properly. So next, we'll do a similar exercise with the XLOOKUP function. This time, we'll create a list of categories and a dependent subcategory for each list. So before we begin, we need to create a list for categories and a list of our subcategories. Okay, so let's begin by selecting cell H2. Now let's go to the Data tab and the Data Tools group. Let's get the drop down for Data Validation. Let's select Data Validation. Under Allow, I want to select List. Next, let's click the arrow. And let's go ahead and select cell A2 to A11. And then go ahead and click the arrow again. Let's go ahead and say OK. Now this will be our primary category. Next, we're going to set up the heading for our subcategories. Okay, so let's go ahead to H3. Let's go ahead and select Data Validation again. Let's select List. Let's select the arrow. This time we're going to select B1 through F1. Let's click the arrow again and then go ahead and say OK. Okay, so now that our lists are set up, let's go ahead and work on our formula. So I would like to begin by looking at the formula inside of cell J2. Now I have color-coded the formula to give you an idea of what each piece represents. This is an XLOOKUP function inside of an XLOOKUP function. Okay, so we have two parts to this formula. Let me start by saying that each part will need to be separated by a comma. Each formula will be enclosed in parentheses. The second formula is enclosed inside the first formula in its own set of parentheses. Number 1 is our XLOOKUP formula. Number 2 is represented in blue and is H2. Now this will be the location of your category and identifier. Number 3, also represented in blue, is the location of your common identifier. Number 4, represented in green, is the beginning of your second XLOOKUP formula. Number 5, represented in purple, is the location and identifier of your subcategory. Number 6, also represented in purple, is the location of your subcategory and your common identifier. Number 7, also represented in purple, is the array of your return values for your subcategories. Okay, now that we have an understanding of our formula, let's go to H4 and type our formula. Let's say equal in XLOOKUP. Let's type an opening parenthesis and select H2 because this is where our primary category will be located. Let's place a comma. Let's go ahead and select A2 to A11 to select our common identifier and location for our categories. Okay, I'm going to place another comma. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin the second part of my formula. I'm going to say XLOOKUP. And I'm going to go ahead and place another parenthesis. Now we're going to select H3 because this is the primary location of our subcategories. Let's go ahead and place a comma. Now let's select the common identifier and the location of our subcategories, which will be B1 through F1. Now let's go ahead and place a second comma. Now we're going to select the array and the return values for our subcategories. We're going to select B2 through F11. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and place a closing parenthesis for our second formula. Then we'll go ahead and place another closing parenthesis to enclose the entire formula. Let's go ahead and click enter. Okay, now let's go ahead and check our functionality. Let's select Monica from the drop down and let's go ahead and select state. Okay, as you can see, Monica is in the state of Utah and that information is correct. Let's change Monica to Tammy and see if the state changes. Okay, Tammy is in Florida, and that is correct. Let's select Wanda, and her order ID ends in 572, and that appears to be correct. So feel free to continue to go through the drop downs. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the lesson up. But before I do, I would like to mention that the data validation tool for the drop down list that we created today was covered in section 6. So if you need to revisit that lesson, that is where you can find it. And with that being said, I hope you found this information helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Congratulations on completing another video and on your commitment to learning this program. I hope that you are getting the most out of our level up lessons, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.